Well, very welcome to this space of Changemakers20, connecting dreams. So important, no? How we go beyond what we are nowadays, and we imagine together, we dream this new society, and how we reconnect with profound human values in order to deserve all this potentiality, this creativity, all these tools that are in our hands to make the world, the life that we deserve and that the nature deserves. So very welcome to this space. It's an honor to count with all of you. As you know, Hecho por Nosotros and Animaná joins artisans, producers, that they have these ancestral techniques in their hands, that they are part of this rich culture that nowadays is being lost. So Hecho por Nosotros and Animaná works together with them using technology, business, creativity, all these tools that we created in this world in order that they may evolve in their hands and that their wisdom can be validated in our daily life. If we are embraced by these unique pieces made slowly, made with love, made with all these secrets, I think we are being part of this change. We are bringing together these masterpieces and these secrets in this daily life. Part of this road is how we give back soul to things. No, we are totally disconnected. And I think fashion that finally brings us all together. Finally, all our life, we dress every day. We are surrounded by these pieces. So everyone can be this change maker. And I hope, dream that this space that I was hearing at the opening session, so many people bringing together collaboration, co-creation, and designing the new world we deserve. So I am honored, and this is the space of youth. So today, Paula, as a representative, will be leading and giving voice to
Thank you, Adri. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we will officially start. So we are here in this masterclass on Traceable Threads, where life pathways intertwine to address sustainability challenges in the global agenda and empower youth as active agents of transformation. And I will take 1 second to read a quote that Adriana sent over this week, because I think it really summarizes the spirit of this gathering today. So it goes like this. Behold with great humbleness the masterpiece of the everlasting weaver, how she brings to life 1,000 strings with only 1 footfall. While shadows are fired all around and strings flow until they meet, and a single stroke seals as 1,000 connections. She has not begged for this, she has been scheming it since the dawn of times, so that the everlasting great master can warp the plot with ease. So this is about real connection, deep connection, and co-creation. I will start this session by welcoming again Adriana, the founder of Hecho por Nosotros, animaná, and the leader of this amazing team that came up with this event today. So, Adri, as a distinguished leader and founder of an esteemed NGO with consultative status at United Nations, could you elaborate on the pivotal role that the integration of ancestral knowledge plays in guiding young leaders from the global south toward the creation of effective and culturally sensitive systemic change efforts?
Well, as I was saying, I think part I answered in the first part. I think we have to reconnect with what we are, who we are. And from there, connecting with this emotion that are a treasure for us, fear, instead of being like tapped and ignored, we have to embrace all that feelings, all that emotions in order to go for that, let's say, new humanity we need. We are being so stupid, yes, and how we are destroying ourselves, our life, our culture, all the potentiality for what? But I'm sure that youth, we are a generation living so many challenges, so many problems, but at the same time, well, it's life, and many times when life is tough, you take from inside other values. Maybe this is the moment, and my dream is to help them, to reconnect and to make easy this journey, to embrace technology and all the tools we have to create the new economy. So this is the welcome.
Thank you, Adri. And you mentioned the new economy. And I think that gives me a little space to our next distinguished speaker, Radhika Shah from Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs. Radhika, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and it's always a really nurturing experience. So my question for you has a little bit to do with these new economies that we are creating. So what role does Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs play in connecting youth-led initiative with established entrepreneurs and investors, fostering an environment conducting to driving systemic change? How do you think you are playing your part in this whole systemic change scenario?
Always a pleasure to kind of join these events. And thank you, Adriana, Paula, for inviting me. For some context, I'm Ravi Kasha, co-chair of the Breakthrough Alliance of the UN Joint SDG Fund and co-president of Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, which is a community about 2,500 plus alumni, students, and faculty advancing tech innovation and entrepreneurship. And before I answer the question, I just wanted to, in this new economy, I just wanted to say that as our world rushes towards the twin transformations of digitization and decarbonization to combat problems we humans have created, such as the climate crisis, unsustainable way of living, unprecedented inequality, it is imperative to ensure that these happen in an equitable, just way, keeping in mind impact on the most vulnerable in society. And as we reimagine our world and try to change complex systems, as we embrace change, as we head towards more sustainable mindsets and societies, it is going to be critical to keep the values of dignity, agency, justice, equity, the spirit of sustainability and circularity front and center. Who better than the young change makers in our world, the students, the youth, with their open minds, unbridled optimism, their ability to embrace change and challenge our set ways of thinking and doing, to help us stay anchored in these values and to find the courage, hope, and determination to take on seemingly unsurmountable challenges. This is a moment to reimagine relationships, power structures, a moment to collaborate across ages, geographies, cultures, to bridge ancient wisdom about a sustainable way of living and intertwine it with cutting-edge inclusion and tech innovation. Coming back to Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, we nurture a Stanford community, a family of sorts, where young student entrepreneurs connect with alumni and faculty. Often the alumni are mentors, angel investors, tech execs, and there is a formal and informal connecting which leads to amazing synergies. The young students deeply enrich our community, bringing their ambitious vision to change the world, the high spirits and love for seemingly impossible challenges, the passion for sustainable and societal impact, and they really are the lifeblood of the community. And as I wrap up your answer, Paula, I want to for a minute come back to why I love the work you guys are doing. As someone who grew up in the backdrop of the Ahmedabad Gandhi Ashram in India, inspired by the Gandhian spirit of respecting human dignity, of thinking of a relationship to nature as that of a custodian, a spirit also ingrained in most ancient cultures, at times captured in the sustainable, vibrant local textile of the pre-Columbian indigenous communities of the high Andes, at other time in the ancient rock story paintings of the indigenous communities at Uluru in the red heartland of Australia, communities who have a continuity of tradition, a way of life, intertwined with nature for over 60,000 years. This ancient wisdom that we have forgotten and need to relearn if we are to save our species and planet. And I want to take a moment to applaud the amazing work of Hecho Nosotros under the inspiring leadership of Adriana, Marina, and team in nurturing an ecosystem, enabling access to digital tools and practices for the indigenous grassroots change makers in our world. And I'm very excited to intertwine the threads of our Silicon Valley tech world and looking at how we can have positive impact in society with the amazing work in the Global South that your organization and others such are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. It is really interesting to understand how sometimes bigger movements can actually take into account the small producer and the artisans and this knowledge and values we have within our local communities. So thank you for that. So right now we are going to move to dive into this entrepreneurship and social impact of the creative industry by the voice of Trisha Langman. She is the Hecho por Nosotros managing partner and leader of EdTech. She's also a sustainability strategist, an educator, and most important, a design thinking specialist. That, you know, it's a program, I think, that can really help us to understand how to take over the systemic change through a different perspective. So Trish, my first question for you, and before that, if you want, you can introduce yourself also. What is the lesson that can be learned from successful cooperation collaborations between young Africans and ancestral wisdom keepers that may serve as inspiration for other regions and organizations?
Hi, everyone. So greetings from Portland, USA. It's a privilege to be here with everyone to share their expertise and experiences. And thanks again to Adriana, our amazing founder, and the HXN team for putting this amazing event together. So what lessons can be learned? There's a rich tapestry in Africa where we found a profound connection between the young generation and its wisdom keepers of their ancestral heritage. I think there can be a good collaboration between young Africans and the ancestral wisdom keepers that have been around for years. And I think there's a place for them to learn invaluable lessons that can inspire global change. I think that over the past few years, we've seen a lot of young people sort of migrate to the cities, and a lot of the ancestral knowledge being lost. But I think that recently there's been a real force to get to kind of, you know, sustain that ancestral knowledge and excuse me. And start to teach the importance on intergenerational dialogue and, you know, and embracing the wisdom of that the ancestors have put together in terms of their natural artisanal textiles that they have. I think that we really need to recognize the significance of the people and the voices and experiences of people who've come before us. I think that having a collaboration between the next gen and the old generations, we will help bridge the gap between generations and help combine this energy to create innovation. I think that the importance of putting together traditional and modern is so important in Africa. We at Hecho por Nosotros have worked with in Nigeria and West Africa with a company called Metimet, which basically worked with some traditional weaving techniques and combined that with looking at a problem around water hyacinth, which was overrunning the waterways and impacting the community. And Chenyo, the leader, put together a really great project, which turned into a business where she helped. She retrained people in their ancestral techniques of textiles, and then put them together with this idea of helping cultivate the water hyacinth that was kind of overrunning all of the waterways. And they were able to retrain women who were able to send their kids to school. And so that's just one aspect, one example of how innovation has helped, can be helpful in a community. So I think, secondly, successful co-creation and collaborations emphasize the holistic approach we need to take, looking at the whole. I think that, we need to keep the generations working together and understand that they are intrinsically linked to push the way forward. I think that they also reinforce the significance of preserving and celebrating cultural heritage. Ancestral wisdom keepers remind us of the resilience and knowledge embedded in our cultures, which can serve as a foundation for innovative solutions. So I think that the most important thing for us to learn that is in Africa is a rich resource source, and that we're able to kind of pull from those resources for both generations.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you. It is always really interesting to hear your insights on how these local designers and the knowledge we have and the techniques can be uplifted and be taken into account when we talk about the creative industries. So our next distinguished speaker is Jason Jacobs. Jason is a member of the Catalyst 2030 community, and he's an Indigenous Commons member. Jason addresses supporting people and landowners, as well as the local communities of his local region that want to take ownership of their present and their future. And I think I have a quote that Jason used in a previous event that I think really summarized his spirit on what he does. And Jason, please, then you can dive into and give us your perspective on this quote. So it's a Maori proverb, and it says, "My strength is not that of an individual, however, that of the collective." So welcome, Jason. We are really interested in hearing your perspective on local communities. And my question for you is, how important is the active participation of Indigenous youth in decision-making processes that affect their own future and the systemic change as well?
Kia ora, everyone. So, tihei mauri ora, e tau nei nā te wairua o nā mātua, tūpuna nā rātou I whakatakoto te ara. Hei hikoi nā mā tātou, nā uri I whakatokia o tātou nā kau ki nā tikanga. Hei arataki I a tātou, kia nā kau nui, kia hapai I o tātou mahi katoa, I roto I te tika, I te pono, I te maramatanga, me te aroha, anō o te tahi ki te tahi. E rongo whakairia ki rongo, kia tina haungie, huie, taie. The life force of us all combined, the spirit of the ancestors are settled here. They laid down the path to be walked by us, the descendants, planted in our hearts and process, to be achieved by us with great spirit, to uphold all our work with what is right, with truth, with understanding, and the love of one to another. The God of peace holds this up high, together, united as one. That's just an old blessing for the room. I thought it was appropriate that I should place that today, because we have so many wonderful people here today. And then I was going to just play a quick little tune, if I may. I think I can, hopefully this will come through, and then I'll answer the question for you.
Thank you, Jason. I do have another question for you, and it is, what are the most significant barriers that youth in the Global South face when attempting to implement these local-based projects?
Yeah, coming back to what you said with the first question, could you repeat it again for me? Because it just cut out on me.
Yeah. So what are the most significant barriers that the local youth has faced, regarding your experience with these local communities when trying to come up with these solutions for systemic changes, for sustainability? The barriers you and your team have found along the way.
Yeah, what's been very tricky for a lot of youth, especially in New Zealand and in other places, is this these four spheres that people interacting with: our personal sphere, our social sphere, and our spiritual sphere, and also when we develop our own professional and educational space. And so this has been very hard for the youth, and in terms of their connections around how they can find a place of standing for them. And so with our Indigenous wisdoms and our families to support the concepts, helping them understand when they should embrace their personal values, and then their social values, being their family and friends and interactions, because it's and then they're finding their spiritual space, and that allows them to then move into their educational and then professional space. And with these places of standing, what we call tūranga waiwai in New Zealand, it allows them to then decide what is useful for them in terms of the community and the people that they want to be involved with and learn from. And then it allows them to participate in the decision making, and then creating their ideas and placing their energy to be able to contribute to the community fire that they gather around. And so that also helps when you have this natural relationship or understanding with the natural environment. It allows you to open up your creative senses and your innovative spaces. And so tūranga waiwai, or your place of standing, is fundamental for all people in terms of how they have their relationship with their intergenerational guidance. And so this is something that everyone struggles with, because of whether it in understanding when you move from your personal space into your social space, and then obviously keeping your spiritual space always connected to you. And then, of course, your professional and educational space pulls on you in different directions, and that can make you sick, it can make you unhealthy, or not make good decisions. So this is something we always are placing in relation to our ancestors, and being good ancestors in relation to how we can contribute to the communities we serve.
Thank you, Jason. What a really deep and meaningful answer. The main problem we have found along the way in Hecho por Nosotros and animaná is actually the disconnection between the spirits and the values, and then the action. So I think what you just said is really important. And you also mentioned creativity. And so that gives me a little space to introduce to our next speaker, Kiran Topiwala. Kiran is an artist. He is the founder of Kula and has gone through several studies on sustainability, such as his pathway on Design School for Regenerating Earth and his master's in development practices at Emory University. So Kiran, welcome. I do have a question for you. So how can the creative talents of youth in the Global South be harnessed to other systemic challenges on the global scale?
Awesome. Thank you, Paula. And thanks for Adriana for inviting me here to this space. Super excited to be here. So right now, just to give a little bit of a background, I'm currently working in India, weaving different stories and using my art to weave these stories of narratives of like landscape regeneration. How can we live more in harmony with the earth? So pretty awesome stuff. So first, going back to the question, I just want to point out like a couple problems like with the question I had, like the premise of harnessing the creative talents of the youth poses kind of inherent challenges, as it implies like a power dynamic that could limit the youth's creative freedom. So it's crucial to recognize that creativity flourishes when nurtured rather than controlled. Additionally, as my friend Joe Brewer, who's actually the founder of the Design School for Generating Earth, suggests, like reframing it as those who act in service to life will reveal much more than the delusional social justice frames about the northern and southern hemispheres of the planet, quote unquote, the global north and the global south. So it becomes evident that our primary systemic challenge then lies in the adhering to of entrenched sustainable development pathways. So there are countless smart people working every day to change things with tactics and organizational structures of the past, and they're getting nowhere. These pathways mirror the very systems we aim to challenge. Going into the question now, like the creative talents of the youth allow us to reimagine the world and enable the use of narrative as an organizing principle while we build resilience through collapse. Art and storytelling empowers the youth to cultivate a sense of belonging around Earth's regeneration and helps to identify these pathways to live in right relationship, not just with each other, but with also the environment. Thus, the only constructive efforts are better focused on Earth stewardship and creating avenues for the youth to actively engage in regeneration. So by doing so, we can start to move beyond these counterproductive patterns and structures to work together to cultivate a sustainable and thriving world for all.
Thank you, Kiran. I do have another question. So it's a little bit like the one for Jason before. What are the most significant barriers that youth and artists youth in the global south face when attempting to implement creative systemic change projects?
Sure. So like among the most significant barriers, like the most notable to me is like this continued like restriction of creative freedom due to like perceived power dynamics. So like, for instance, attempting to harness youth creativity like can inadvertently stifle the innovative and thinking and hinder genuine change. So also another kind of barrier is that there's not really any pathways for people to like kind of do this work with art, with storytelling, to weave these narratives of landscape regeneration and also have that kind of security in the traditional sense. Like if there was already that kind of a pathway for folks to do that work, especially the youth, like we would probably already have massive systemic change projects that have done something miraculous.
Thank you, Kiran. That's totally true. And the mentioning of storytelling just opens the space to present our next remarkable speaker. She works in the field of fashion, a really immense industry related not only to art, but also to the economy. So I want to welcome Kerry Bannigan, who is a social entrepreneur, pioneer global fashion and media initiatives that advances the creative economy as a driving force for sustainable development. She is the founder of the Fashion Impact Fund, an organization that focuses on the support of female founders in the fashion industry that are leading sustainable solutions. And she is also part of the United Nations Conscious Fashion and Lifestyle Network. Welcome, Kerry. We are really happy you are here. I do have a question for you to answer also, and it is, what innovative approaches can philanthropic organizations take to amplify the voices of young change makers advocating for systemic shift in the fashion world, especially?
Thank you everyone so much for having me and putting this together. And you're right, the fashion industry is an extremely powerful, influential and large industry, whether you're looking at impact and influence globally, as well as economic that you said. And what you are starting to see globally is many youth really advocating for how fashion can take its negative influence currently that we're seeing and how it actually can drive change. And something that's going to be very crucial to see that work, as everyone else has touched on here, is the power to be able to support the work that's happening. And it has to be in different ways and that we've seen. But I will add, just specific to what you have just asked, is in regards to what approaches can amplify the work that these youth are looking to drive, whether they're individuals, organizations, or collectives. And I think something that we should not shy away from is actually the importance of having youth-centered platforms. And by that, I mean, this is actually something specifically designed for the youth change makers. What we see a lot of now is that they're plugging in their ideas to existing social media channels. But organizations that have platforms just like we sit here today, it's incredible to see how there will always be that track and that influence in that input from youth. And what we see today across the power of social media, or even just digital tools in general, it's so important that we, that saying a few years ago was about passing the mic. It's actually not about that. It's about building tools that can allow the youth change makers to connect, collaborate, and showcase their work, as if to be a path now on how to educate us on what that looks like across all generations, to see their perspective, the lens, and their lived experiences. Now, for me, a big one always actually also comes down to the importance of the redistribution of finances. I truly stand by, we need to be able to see more grants and fellowships backing up the work of young activists and change makers, especially when we want to see projects related to sustainable fashion, ethical production, and such other shifts that we need to see in the space. We always hear a lot about mentorship, but actually financial support and the resources to help them scale their impact is actually crucial at this point. And so we need to see more of that happening. Also for me, where I really believe big approaches need to always look at is the education and the training. All of us, no matter what age demographic or where we are sitting, we can all continue to learn more and about how to drive the change. And I think the more that we learn, we also then naturally start to amplify a lot of the work of the youth change makers, whether it's being amplified at your family's dinner table and you're sharing it, or you're using it on your social, or in your community. There's so many ways from big to small, and that's really, really important. And so, I still stand by that mentorship is important, but it's very, very important to see the tools that we have to also share the finance. And so other thing that I think is really important here when you want to look at how we can amplify young change makers' work is actually ensuring things like this platform and convening here today is to remember the power of impactful events, whether that is in person or with the power of technology that's bringing us together here, is ensuring that there are enough voices, that it's not just about the youth gathering together, but they are actually in really important rooms with the policymakers, world leaders, the stakeholders across the industry, and that from there we can then look at these events to facilitate networking, knowledge sharing, and collaboration. And I do want to add, I feel it's extremely important to ensure that we as other generations are not putting this continued burden on what we dub as youth, because there's a lot of work being put on them and we have to be extremely careful with that. And so just to sum up, I feel like the youth-centered platforms, grants and finances, education and impactful events are ways that we can all really be there to amplify and support the work of the youth today.
Thank you, Kerry, for this really interesting response on how important collaboration is and the creation of real tools, which opens this little space for the Hecho Nosotros team to explain why is that we are here, how did we got here, and why is that we are not stopping and we are continuing to create this change we want to see in the world, led by youth, but mentored by this amazing professional just as you that wants to create a better world, not only for you, but for us as well and the next generations to come. So give me 1 second that I will share my screen.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor. And I think how to make collaboration work is my only question of the day. I think that this masterpiece to create just collaboration. And I was born in Patagonia, surrounded by that immense nature, all that beauty, all that power of nature, so savage, and living with indigenous people. Some of them, they give me the strength to go through to the world to say what's going on. In this something in order to express these problems that found everywhere, not just in Patagonia. I could see in my first hand how was so difficult to be involved locally, to create value added with our natural fibers, with our culture, how I had to left my place jointly with so many. And I embraced that, went to so many countries, places around the world. Finally, I decided to put all the energy to say, can be possible, it is possible, how to make it, how to make collaboration work, how to gather these treasures, all this wisdom, all those beautiful people around the world in a common voice. And for that, Paula, if you want, we can go through the presentation, is that created like two tools, As I said, I noticed the fragmentation of the value chains, how hand workers, artisans, producers were totally aside from the rest of the value chain. I could notice nowadays how fashion also embraced sustainability in the same system without looking and putting attention, giving the right attention to this bridge that may connect all these grassroots with the rest of the value chain. So we are not really creating solutions. I think we are in a moment, any key moment, where the technology should evolve in hands of the grassroots, in hands of indigenous people. And in this dialogue of every day, we can go through this systemic change. So we can go to the tools that we have been co-creating. In this sense, it's so difficult to understand the bottlenecks, the problems, the different cultures, the different issues, how local micro, small, medium films, producers, artisans relate with the different stakeholders. And animaná, this brand that joins artisans and producers all across Latin America, joining this Andean culture in a common voice, gave us a treasure, yes, a learning on how to make collaboration work, the good practices, the cases, how technology in their hands validate their good practices, how integrate, how all these gender issues, all these problems of losing biodiversity, ancestral techniques could be solved by this beautiful dialogue among professionals, students, youth, people of goodwill, with artisans, producers. And when we are working on a problem, we forgot that we are from different spaces, countries, ages, professionals. We are just one, co-creating a solutions. And with this treasure, Hecho por Nosotros, collaborates with all the stakeholders, policymakers, academics, designers, technologists in order to go through the solutions. So these 15 years, we could co-create this platform, this igniting, regenerative, and circular models through collaborations with so many valuable materials, knowledge of change makers, artisans, producers, in order that this bridge among the grassroots and the rest of the value chain may happen. So I would like to invite Trish, who is part of this beautiful journey, as all of you, in order to tell us a little bit about this toolkit, this open space and a live space where we can make this journey of generating our system as an action, as each of the ones and their knowledge and this experience totally changed the future of their life. And Trish, would you like to tell us a little bit about the toolkit?
At the core of what we do at Hecho Nosotros is education. If we don't educate the next gen, if we don't educate entrepreneurs and give them the resources, it's very hard to implement systemic change. So for the last few years, we've been working on a toolkit, giving, which is basically a series of courses with tools to really help entrepreneurs, design professionals, the next generation, be able to learn not only about regenerative models, but how to implement them in their communities. This toolkit aims to build bridges and enhance collaboration. It will help to foster community. We want everybody to be involved in this idea of stewardship. We believe in building community, and one of the things that we've done with the toolkit is to really understand that working globally and collectively, in our communities, is a way which we can learn from each other. So co-learning, tailored knowledge, capacity building, certification, and acquired knowledge and skills are all part of our toolkit. But we also encourage best practices and think about how we can start from the beginning of the design cycle to the end. So designing with intention, understanding your purpose of your business, understanding why you are designing something, and thinking about the consequences of your design. I'm a professor, so forever I'm teaching people about how you need to think about everything holistically. It's not just about designing, production, logistics, packaging, it's everything together. You think about that. So when we design with intention, we really think about it. In the toolkit, we've split it up into 3 different parts. The first part being a course around design thinking. And what I love about design thinking is it's steeped in empathy. And empathy is a way we learn from each other. We put each other in each other's shoes. And when we do that, it allows us to innovate and to also think about consequences your actions have on each other. And we've just been talking together about interconnectedness today. So fundamentally, when we talk about the toolkit, what we're talking about is finding a way to innovate and collaborate towards systemic change. So with design thinking, they get an opportunity to look at sustainability through the lens of empathy. And we put the course together with not just big companies, but with smaller companies, entrepreneurs, SMEs essentially, as examples, so that people who are coming in here from the next gen or people who are already established working in micro and small businesses understand it can be done, and there's a way to look at problems. One thing I just love about design thinking, it's a really good problem solver. And so give tools like that to people to make them understand that there's ways around business, there's ways around design, is really important. Another thing that we're looking at the toolkit is looking at materials. And we look at it in two ways. We look at, the next gen materials, biomaterials, which I love, but really, the problems around that, around scalability. But also we look at, traditional textiles, those two working hand in hand. It's not all about the next gen materials. As I say to my students, sometimes, the end product may be sustainable, but the processes that get you there aren't always. And so we really need to look at, again, holistically, just like our ancestors did. They really respected the resources. They really respected thinking. They designed with intention without even knowing. I think that we have really good examples in there of how to scale and think about materials, but also we have examples from animaná, from the use of wool, plant, animal, how to think about leather sustainably. That's a double-edged sword, thinking about it, there's people's livelihoods involved in materials. And if we're moving on to something else, we need to make sure that we replace their jobs and their livelihoods as well. Sustainability is a social, there's a social aspect to it. We cannot just move without thinking about the communities involved. And so in that toolkit, we really talk to communities about how they've been able to scale up using materials, traditional and, new next gen materials. The third part of the course toolkit is really built around circularity, which is the key for the fashion industry, I believe. We have so much waste. So using what we already have, we look at it through the lens of business, but bringing in that empathy, design thinking, problem solving aspect as well. So we really do look through this, we give you tools to help your business. I'm a designer, but I also, work with businesses, and it's really getting that balance between understanding how to be creative, but also how to work as a business, but also thinking about your environment as well. So we really do think about that in terms of being a circular business. What does that really mean? And how can you implement that as a micro, as an SME, as a micro or small or medium business? It's really important that the next gen understand that. And so we have reached out to many colleges in Africa, some in India, some in South America, to make sure that they have a really good grounding in circularity and have the tools that they need, especially the business tools, but also thinking about production and also thinking about how those tools work in terms of, packaging and logistics, everything, the whole value chain. And so I love the circularity courses that we have there because they are steeped in so much knowledge. We've worked with academics, we've worked with industry professionals to put all the tools and put all of the content together. It's been a labour of love for me and for all of the team that've been working on it. And so, when we get to launch in September, we will be very, very grateful for all of the people who have helped put this, get this out there to the people who need it.
Thank you, Trish. When we talk about collaboration, we feel so enthusiastic because this is made by collaboration around the world in a totally transversal way. And these tools are so valuable for different stakeholders in order to make this journey, in order to really understand what means to go to this systemic change to regenerate our system. And when we talk about fashion, we are talking about the world we have today. And I think that proposing a difference in this industry, we are really collaborating to a systemic change worldwide, as fashion is totally transversal to all industries. And many of the problems we have are born in the system of fashion. So together we have this enormous opportunity to make fashion the new platform of the transformation of our society, the platform of recovering our ancestral techniques, traditions, biodiversity, about integrating us in a new world in a different way. Of course, we are part of United Nations. We have been collaborating with UNESE around traceability and transparency, how we can bring these tools in hands of the grassroots of producers in order that they can give their own voice and be part of the big table. We need to stop one validating what other does around certifications. We have technology that totally democratize and share with the grassroots. We are giving birth to real solutions, and to integrating our value chains is a huge part of the solutions. Direct financing, how the grassroots, the second hand of employment around the world, is handmade, although they are totally a part of all our tools and systems that we made in our world. So how can we bring tools, financial literacy to the grassroots to integrate to these value chains? Gender issues that are born from local people and can co-create solutions. All this should be taken in a systemic way where all stakeholders should be part. And Hecho por Nosotros area of systemic change of the University of Systemic Change was made and is continue evolving through all stakeholders around the world. And in this sense, youth, that we are in the youth event, would love Paula to bring, representing thousands of youth, your experience at one of our projects in Huánuco, for example.
That I am opening my camera. Is it on? Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you, Adri. Thank you, Trish. Thank you for all of the panelists here. It's been really amazing. And I am here to talk about a little bit about my experience. I'm not going to lie. It all started because I did not have hope. I was really kind of sad and stressed, and I had a lot of anxiety when I started becoming more aware of what was happening in the world regarding not only sustainability related to the environment, but also the social aspect of it. As part of a developing country, it is a really deep and rooted topic that we have to try to find a solution to. So I am a fashion designer, and when I entered this organization, I started becoming a little bit more part of the community on the project. It was they were developing by the time. I had the amazing chance and the luck to be part of a project in Huánuco, Peru, with a group of artisans that were, you won't even believe how talented they are. And we get to see how they were working with woods, they were working with threads, they were working with clay. And so what we did there was create this kind of team of really young and more expertise professionals that were really interested in different topics. We touched topics such as marketing, as fashion design, of colors and financing. And we started talking with this community about what tools they thought they needed and they wanted to have in hands. So first we had a dialogue with them on what is that they thought they needed. We ran some tests on the tools, and we start building and co-creating with them these series and cycles of different kind of classes, but also more like a conversation, an ongoing conversation on these tools and the knowledge we had, and we had to share and bring to the tables, and the needs and the knowledge that they had on the values and on how to market and story tell their own products. So this whole project was about this really teamwork between these global professionals from all around the world, because the team was conformed by people from Argentina, from Europe, from different places, from Latam, a lot of people from Peru, as because all of the law topics were managed by people and professionals from Peru. And we had the chance to build with them this storytelling of their own products, and just to bring to the table the tools they needed and the information they wanted to learn. We did not become, and I realized in that moment how these things should really work. We did not bring to them some external information on how to change their ways and their products and the way they were telling their stories just to fit in the market. What we did there was actually create a new way and a new perspective of portraying those values they have with the tools we have on hand. So we only bring the technology we already knew and the education we already have, and kind of build a bridge between all of that we knew and all of that they wanted to learn. And by that, what we got to at the end of this whole process that took several months were some, first of all, amazing engagement. They were all there. We created a really nice community, and it was kind of a family. We still have in touch and are in touch with them. And second, these kind of upgraded products that are still really honest and still reflect on all the knowledge and the ancestral technique they have, but that have shifted a little bit on how they want to tell those stories to fit in the global, the local, and the international markets. All of these, as I said before, was led by some professionals, some really with a lot of expertise professional, but also some really, really young people. And it ended up in a real case of financial inclusion. We led it by Edison, who I don't think is here, but he's also a leader in Hecho por Nosotros. What we did there was create some direct financing using the new upcoming technologies such as cryptocurrencies to create this financial literacy, to bring it as a tool and put it in hands of the artisans. All of that process was really protected, and we take into account that we have to have all the information and bring to them all the information so they can start taking these decisions for their businesses themselves. So from my side, I can tell you I learned a lot more than what I did give in that occasion. And it was my first kind of experience regarding the sustainability and the social aspect of it. And from there on, I just changed my mindset, and I understand how important it is to have these real experiences. Thank you, Adri.
Thank you, Paula. And I think that system change needs this organic evolve of experiences of learning, ongoing from theory to practice and creating the new theory. And so many students, professionals after this experience also are part of case studies that share at universities, at United Nations. So welcome all to this space. It's an open space. It's made by us, Hecho por Nosotros, and hope that this collaboration can grow, evolve, and make it together. We can make it possible. I would like Paula to continue with the speakers.
So just as a close-up, what we are going to do today is, as well as you already know, this is the first opening masterclass, and after this, we will lead a lot of labs and different events. So for the day of today, for all of the labs and all of the events that we are carrying, we have one question that we are transversally cut, all of them, and that all of them we will be trying to answer to the same question. So the question is, how can systemic change approach effectively this address of sustainability challenges in the global agenda while empowering youth as active agents of transformation? So this is the question we will have, and what I will do and I want you to do is, if Jason, Kerry, and maybe Radhika can answer just really briefly to this topic so we have an insight on what is coming up in the next hours. Kerry, if you are there and you want to open your mic.
Yes, sorry, my signal's struggling a little bit. You out a little then. Can you repeat the end? That's when I lost you.
Yeah, sorry. So it's about how, yeah. You already touched a little bit on this topic. So basically it's how we can approach effectively this address of sustainability challenges in the global agenda while empowering youth as active agents of transformation.
So to that, and great question, yeah, and just to build off of what I said earlier, I think something that's also really important is to look at cross-cultural understanding and collaboration. There is so much going on all around the world, and there's so much we can learn from each other and the youth, from their lived experiences. There are things happening when you put on the news now, or whether social media, if people are sharing the effects, the causes, the crises that are going on, multi-crises, every day happening across the world. The most important thing is that we really actually empower those that are in those moments and living through these experiences. It's those that we empower with the resources that they need. And actually, as we look at this, every region is different with the issues that they're facing, but we're all looking to the same North Star. And I think especially here with the work that Adriana and team do, we look at the SDGs as a guiding framework, as our North Star as well. And while that's a fantastic idealistic playbook, we've got to take a step back and say, how can we empower the youth whilst we're also driving this change? And in order to do that, we have to really understand what's going on in the different regions, the different resources that are required for the multiple crises that are being faced. But with that, again, comes down to, I'm a big believer in the cross-cultural collaboration, but with that also needs to understand that we have to amplify the diverse perspectives of what is going on in this space, because sustainability and sustainable development is only going to be achieved when all voices, all lived experiences, and all perspectives are at the table, being able to tell us what is needed in that moment for what is going on across the different regions that we're seeing today.
Yeah, I would like, Kerry, to ask you, as well, we know us for so long. I see how difficult it is from brands and projects from the global south, no? Where we, let's say, we are really evolving and making this, let's say, happen differently, to be part of the big table of impact investors and let's say where the financing flows and also the marketing. How you find this, mostly being part at United Nations and all the Sustainable Development Goals, where these principles are the ABC, yes. And if you have like ideas, I think everything is changing because of the problems we are facing, no? But how can we accelerate this collaboration?
Yeah, I think a big point to that also is
stronger
that,
voices.
You know,
from
I
the South.
emphasize so much how already so many of the solutions and systems and strategies are already in place to drive the change. The solutions are sitting there, and many of them are women-led, and they are sitting in the global south. And it's like, how do we ensure that those voices and the ideas and the work and the solutions that exist are in place, are at these tables? And so a lot of the work that we do is bridging the gap between those that set the agenda, I would say, you know, the United Nations, the countries, the governments, and so forth, to then bridging the gap with those that actually are delivering on that agenda and doing it, whether it's because they want to thrive in their communities, or many that we see right now are doing it purely out of survival. It's how they exist. It's how things happen in those communities, and especially where you work and the artisans that you uplift and things like that. So I think we've got to continue with platforms here, ensuring that we can provide the structure, the connectivity, the tools, even down to simple digital, right? For people to be able to join this conversation, there has to be the infrastructure in their community to be able to even dial into this conversation. And they're the things when we look at the digital divide, and so many people do not connect the power of fashion to drive all of this, to bring in change, is across all of the 17 SDGs. And right now, fashion is one of the sectors that negatively impacts all SDGs and yet is all interconnected. And so, kind of back to your question, one of the biggest things we aim to do with the UN Conscious Fashion Lifestyle Network is ensure that we're showcasing the work, starting at that step, from people in the global south and other regions that generally are left out of the conversations. Because when they're left out of the conversations, it means their work is not looked at by investors. They're not there in the majority stakeholder conversations and are making decisions for change. And so our big thing is always around amplify the work, starting with showcasing these solutions and then ensuring that you can provide infrastructure and strengthen that to then drive everything else forward as a knock-on effect.
Regarding this, I would like to mention two things. One is that many times connection is available, but how the content is interesting, because people that they are living their issues, their problem they're facing, they will not be all days like in conversations that are not interesting for them, no? And in this sense, to bridge this gap is so difficult and needs so much, let's say, master and knowledge of how to make it. In this week at this event, we will have many tables, round tables with artisans being connected. I'm so happy, and connecting also with the platform and giving their own voice. And the other is regarding what you are saying. We are so happy that United Nations Environmental Program selected animaná and Hecho por Nosotros as a model of consumer of production at the playbook of systemic change. And these visibilities are so important because if not, we are lost. I see how many empty box grows in the north, yes, with all the goodwill, but without this experience of how to make this bridge among real issues, understanding and co-creating. So in that sense, we are so happy and looking for more collaborations.
Thanks,